it's Monday. It is Monday, so you know the thing. So plan on listening to Gypsy Rose Blanchards podcast that she was recently on. So I'm just gonna let a few more people get in here. Probably just gonna chat for a little bit, but a lot of people messaged me and they were like, you should do it live. And I've done a lot of stuff like that, like live reactions and stuff. So we're gonna see. Now I am gonna like stop it and talk through some stuff because it's essentially a reaction. So I can't like play through it all, and then unfortunately, just because that's how things work, and I plan on posting this on YouTube because I told people I would, because I know not everybody can join when I do this because it's early morning. A lot of people are working and or going to school and have stuff to do, so I get it. Good morning, Mimi. So yeah, this will be posted on my YouTube. But yeah, how was everyone's weekend? I hope it was good. I just got shunned from the second. I had so much drama over the weekend with Facebook groups. Like, they're so toxic over there. Like, I'm so glad I never really... So when I was a teenager, I used to love Facebook. Like, Facebook was like the new thing. I did MySpace thing too, but Facebook, when it first came out, was like the new thing. But that's when you could like chat with people. But groups back then, they were like hardcore, but like now like groups on Facebook, they act like they own the whole subject. So I had joined this group so I can get awareness out. I don't join groups, I mean, some, because, you know, like with criminal cases and stuff, a lot of groups over on Facebook share public information and records and stuff. And so there was some that I did follow, but I was trying to get awareness out for justice for baby Jojo, the 5-month-old that lost his life allegedly at the hands of his father, which even though evidence is now not really supporting it, there was something, there was still negligence there. There was a lot of negligence. And so I joined this group thinking, oh, well, my videos can get a wider audience. Instead, they got judged simply because I said I knew baby Jojo's mother, thinking that I was taking one side or over the other. Now, his mother herself will tell you that I do not do that. I tell it like it is. That's not the type of person I am. If you've ever been in my inboxes, like, be forewarned. If you guys are trying to have a personal conversation with me, let me know you're having a personal conversation with me, because I'm not saying I'm not a friendly person. I'm just saying, you know, like, if you're telling me something and it's in regards to something I talk about in my videos, and you're claiming something and you provide the information claiming that, you know, and you're not saying, you know, I don't want this spread everywhere else, or this is between you and me, that's like stuff that you're saying is facts. So I'm going to take it as that. You know what I mean? There's some things that I don't do research on. The Resilient Jenkins being one of them. So hello, good morning, everyone. We are going to be listening to the podcast that had Gypsy Rose Blanchard. Now, I listened to this podcast. I'm just waiting for more people to come in. And this will be posted on YouTube. So no need. If you guys have to go, I completely understand it. But I listened to this podcast while I was at work, and I was like, I was getting aggravated, and I was like giggling under my breath, like silently. And I was like, I have to do a live listening to it. And of course, this isn't going to be like, you're not going to get to listen to it all together, because that's the only way I could really post it on YouTube. We're going to like listen to it in portions, and then we'll talk about the things and situations and lies, because there is blatant lies in this, but there's also not. Like, this podcaster obviously wanted some kind of attention on her podcast. I believe, I haven't done too much research in her, but I think that she just wanted the attention and wanted like to gloat that she knew so many people in that community, and this was just one more person she knows or whatever, you know. Good morning. everyone. Good morning, good morning. Hello, my peoples. Everybody's coming in. Hello, Lottie. We are going to listen to the Gypsy Rose podcast that she was on. So if you guys are interested, stay. If not, cool. I'm going to be uploading it on my YouTube. I would love to thank everybody that listened to my podcast over the weekend. I truly do appreciate it. I had people from the UK, from Texas, from everywhere listening. So thank you guys so much for streaming my podcast. My podcast again is Blurred Lines, Crime, Conspiracy, and the Truth Behind the Gossip. I covered Elizabeth Smart this last episode. I have many episodes you guys can go back on. Started this podcast last year. Still very proud of it. I love this I love doing it. I don't know. It's just like my passion project, but yeah. It is 8:42 a.m. my local time. I'm in Mountain Standard Time. So yeah, I wanted to thank everybody because it's been a long road. Like I only had like 5 people listening a month at a time, and now it's grown. It's not as big as I want it to be yet, but it has grown. Have I gotten backlash? Yes. Have I gotten people telling me you need to change this, that, and the other? Yes. And I'm still really working on it. It's kind of just, it's hard to do like music and all of that other stuff that goes with it. It's like a learning curve, you know. Thank you, Goss Mom. Hello, good morning. Good morning to y'all. Good morning to y'all. All right. I think I have my average amount of people in here. So, if you guys, while we're listening to a portion, I don't really want to talk over it because there's some things that I think a lot of people need to pay attention to. Because Gypsy doesn't talk very much in this podcast. Do you guys notice? It's kind of crazy. I know a lot of people have listened to it. I'm going to put this over on my YouTube so you guys can listen without having to do it endlessly and back to back. I know some people appreciate it. So we're going to get to it. Let me pull it up here. Good morning. And Lottie and Goth Mom, just be on the lookout for who's in here today. Because I know that it could be possible that they don't want us to, you know what I mean? So I just want you guys to be aware of my admin, my mods. Yeah. Just be super aware, because I was thinking last night and I was like, oh my God, these people probably don't want me to be here. All right, so this episode came out on Thursday, which would have been what? I don't even know. My thing doesn't have another calendar. So it came out on Thursday. This is only part 1, guys. And let me tell you that I won't be listening to any other parts. I don't want to listen to any other parts. This is the last part. The one part is already making the mistake in this, and the mistakes are evident in this. There was no reason to have a multi-part series other than having clout, in my opinion. So with that being said, we will only doing that. Like I said, I'm not going to be listening to the entirety and then like talking through it or anything. We're gonna listen to a portion, and then we'll talk about it, and then we'll listen to it. I'm going to be pausing it and stuff like that, and that's the way I'm going to keep everything up, because it's commentary and stuff like that. So if you guys don't like that, you guys can go ahead and listen to it. I highly recommend, if you do listen to it, definitely leave a review on it. Leave your thoughts, because Spotify and like Apple and stuff like that, you can't remove comments. So this woman has already tried to silence her comments in her comment section on Instagram, just like Gypsy Rose Blanchard. And I think she should take some people's advice. So here we go. This is Case Files, Nobody Should Believe Me, Gypsy Rose Blanchard with the host Andrea Dunlap, okay? Let me make sure. Might have commercials too, guys, so
Story Media.
just FYI, okay?
Hello,
Hey, Barry
it's
in
Andrea
bed.
Dunlop, and
Let me know if you
today
can hear it
on
okay.
You Should Believe Me, we have a very special episode that is a full circle moment for me and the show. My conversation with Gypsy Rose Blanchard. It seems unlikely that anyone listening would be unfamiliar with Gypsy's story, but as a refresher, Gypsy Rose Blanchard is an American woman who, after suffering lifelong Munchausen by
She's
proxy
reading
abuse,
the Wikipedia
conspired
page.
with her online boyfriend, Nicholas Godejohn, to kill her mother, Dee Dee Blanchard, in June of 2015. Gypsy pled guilty to second-degree murder in 2016 and received a 10-year prison sentence. She was paroled on December 28th, 2023, after serving about 8 years. Gypsy and her story have been the subject of major media attention, including documentaries, dramatizations, a reality show, and extensive tabloid coverage. And we're going to talk about all of that today. So without further ado, here's my conversation with Gypsy Rose Blanchard. This episode is brought to you by Peloton.
Like I said, there's probably going to be commercials, guys, so I apologize in advance. I'm going to turn it down during that time, but just as a reminder to everybody joining, this is the Nobody Should Believe Me podcast. Sorry, I'm just trying to listen to see if it's on yet or not.
Andrea. It's come to my attention that some of you have been served programmatic ads for ICE on my show. Now, podcasters don't get a lot of control over which individual ads play and for whom on our shows, but please know that we are trying everything we can to get rid of these by tightening our filters.
It's kind of like raspy, huh?
Please do let us know.
To each their own.
I want it to be known that I do not support ICE. I am the daughter of an immigrant. I stand with immigrants. Immigrants make this country great. Well, first of all,
of course,
I wanted to have you introduce yourself to listeners using the context that you would like. So who are you according to Gypsy?
I am... Okay, so who am I? My name is Gypsy Rose Blanchard, and I am an author, and I am a mother, a proud mother.
I love that. So, Gypsy, we had an interesting sort of circuitous route to one another. Obviously, when you were released from prison, is it 2 years ago now?
2 years, yeah.
Yeah, that was a big news story. Obviously, I have the only podcast that I know of that covers Munchausen by proxy cases pretty exclusively to this point. So obviously, a lot of people asked me about interviewing you. And I said to folks who asked me that question at the time, you know, I'd be much more interested in talking to her a couple of years from now. And here we are. So it feels really fortuitous, and I'm really happy that you reached out. So we originally actually met each other because your producers of your Lifetime series reached out to me and taped a conversation where you asked me some questions. And so I was really happy to connect with you in that context.
So that's weird. So I didn't catch that in the beginning. When I first started listening to it, because I had just gotten to work. And so she says, we taped a segment for your Lifetime show that you were asking me questions. And that's weird. And I have no doubt that was Gypsy Rose Blanchards doing, and that's why it never made it onto the show. So first of all, and then second of all, I just want to say that in my opinion, the fangirling that happens in the beginning of this podcast is nauseating. Physically nauseating. Again, just my opinion and my review, honestly.
Your baby was brand new. I remember seeing her on the screen there, and then you reached out to me more recently, and so thank you so much for coming on. And my first question for you is just, how are you doing? What's your life all about right now?
My life right now is all about motherhood, and there's really little time for anything else. So I spend my days doing the whole housework mom thing that seems to take up all of my time. I have few hobbies, but the things that my life is about right now is healing and learning how to navigate a life that is post prison, but also like post the surge of media attention after getting released.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say you've had a pretty unique set of life experiences. You know,
of all
growing
her
up in an
doing.
abusive home where you were extremely isolated,
Thank you,
being in prison, which is another sort of set of very different social circumstances, I would assume, from the outside world. And then going into
We
this
do, Goth Mom. We make the
period
same
of your life
faces.
where
I
you
feel
were
like
out of
I feel like
prison
it's
and
true.
you had this massive surge of media attention and online fame/infamy, whichever way you would characterize it. And now, do you feel like you're in kind of a new chapter, or has that sort of attention on you persisted?
So I want to say, so again, a lot of this podcast is the podcaster Andrea Dunlap talking a lot. Gypsy doesn't say much. Like she's, you know, but the podcaster, in her trying to be a podcaster and like trying to fangirl at the same time, in my opinion, she does this thing where she's trying not to say the things that most likely Gypsy is uncomfortable with talking about, and it's very, very evident that she's doing that. Like it's very, very evident that she doesn't know what to talk about. She doesn't know how to ask the correct questions. She was not prepared for this. And as much as she says she's such an expert, the research in this is lacking very, very severely. So let's continue.
Wondering, like, sort of how that is now.
I think it has lessened over time. You know, there was that initial surge of people posting about me and media attention and everything. And now that we're, 2 years post all that, there is still attention. It is not as much as it was in the beginning. But at least it's enough to where, like, it's died down enough to where I can go to the grocery store and only be recognized like once. So.
That must just be incredibly intense. And I think, I think a lot about sort of what your relationship with social media must be like, because, can you remind me how, and I know this is sort of part of your story, but how old are you, chronologically speaking?
I'm 34.
Okay, you're 34. Yeah. So, these technologies were around when you were younger. I'm 43. So, like, I really was like the last age of person to like grow up without social media. And like, I didn't have a cell phone until after college. But, so obviously some of those technologies were around when you were growing up, but obviously you were growing up in very specific set of circumstances. And
I want to stop it right there too, because like she's talking, like she's trying to say, I know that you had access to this. How much of the access did, like, she's trying to act like, instead of being flat out with it, she is just like beating around the bush. And I feel like this woman has watched some things, but she just don't believe them. So yeah. No, it's all Gypsy.
And, I assume those things were not available to you, the way they are on the outside when you were in prison.
Facebook was a thing. TikTok was not. TikTok, I came in.
I make the
picture,
big bucks on TikTok,
almost at the middle to tail end of my prison sentence. So that was not something that I knew navigating before I got locked up.
I need to look into her more.
When you were in prison, what kind of sort of technologies and communications were available to you while you were in prison?
Very, very limited. We had
emails,
personal tablets assigned to us that through the course of my prison sentence, we were able to get more and more apps over time.
Hey, Nikki, thank you for the heart.
Excited about the phone app. So we were allowed to call our family on the tablet after so long. And we were able to have like little games and stuff like that, but it was not internet accessible.
Right, so you didn't have kind of unfettered access to social media accounts and that kind of thing. So, then you come out of prison and then
that chick, thank you for the heart. I appreciate it.
Immediately develop this just massive
This is the part.
social media following. Millions and millions millions of people. And, you know, that would be jarring, I think, for someone in any set of circumstances, frankly. You know, I think the experience of going viral, I think can be downright traumatic under the best of circumstances, and this was obviously not the best of circumstances.
Gypsy's lies coming up. Yep.
I wonder
there
kind
you
of
go,
like,
conspiracy.
how you've navigated that piece, because, you know, I was listening to an interview with you. You're talking about that you had something like 8 million followers on Instagram, and then deleted that account, which I think for people who are, you know, the large number of people that are pretty obsessed with building,
well, they've talked for a while,
that kind
so
of following, or anything, even sort of a percentage of that kind of following, just sort of
copy and paste narrative,
yeah, just is inconceivable, right? So yeah, so talk to us about that kind of that decision, and just some of the decisions that you've made around social media and how you've navigated that, because that's just the most intense experience I can imagine on social media.
It is. So before I got out of prison, I had asked my then husband, now ex-husband, to create social media for me. So Facebook,
number
TikTok,
uno.
Instagram. So
not even one.
Made these accounts for me, so when I would get out, I would have access to them and already built a small following. So I think right before I got out, I had like maybe 500 followers, and then overnight it went into the millions. Like, we just kept watching it climb and climb and climb, and it was wild. And so
Rachel was doing a
for
lot of
me, social media was something fun. Like, it was something that I got to do TikTok dances and little cute clothing hauls and stuff like this. But there was also such a call to action for me to treat it more seriously as a platform to advocate. And so here I am, fresh out of prison, don't even have my own feet on the ground, and people are like, you need to advocate. You need to be basically what you are in a night. And that was a lot of pressure on me. And then mix that with, you know, of course the internet's going to do what the internet's going to do. They're going to build you up and tear you down. So after so many months.
Okay. So, just like, so just like Conspiracy said, there was a lie coming up. This was the first, like, big lie that I clocked. Because I was like, oh my God, like, what? Why is she saying that? So she said that she had her ex-husband, Ryan, who she's not with anymore, which she always has to, like, reiterate, like, oh, yeah, like, that was horrible, whatever, I don't know. And so she's like, he was managing them. No, your friend in prison, while she was still in prison, was doing that for you. Like, Ryan was not. That's you. She made him way before. Like, she acts like a week before she decided, oh, let's do social media. No, because she had to have a platform in order to promote her Lifetime show. Lie number one. Lie number two is she keeps saying that she's advocating. Like, she keeps saying that this, like, just because you do things like 5 or 6 times and it's the same repetitive things, and you keep reiterating that you're going to advocate, but you never do, it doesn't make it something that you're doing. It doesn't make it something you're turning it into, because the only thing you've done is gone live, answer only questions you pick from the comments, and talk about how wonderful it is to be a mother. There's no advocating, there's no talking. You talk about your normal life, and it's boring, quite frankly. Like, it's no, like, and I don't want that to be for her, like, a drama or whatever. But yeah, talking about Gypsy, yeah, I've seen those before.
I started to see people trying to tear me down. And in the mix of all that, I was also on parole. And so my parole officer had told me that it would probably be in my best interest if I would just stay off social media. It wasn't a direct order.
She should have listened.
It was a suggestion. And so that's when I deleted the 9 million follower Instagram, but maintained the 9 million, 10 million TikTok account. And so that's what kind of sparked that decision, was just because I was tired of all the harassing phone calls that people were making to my parole officer, falsely reporting me for anything and everything.
So well, don't put anything online.
I have had love-hate relationship with social media. There's so many people that do support me, and then there's also so many people that
I know,
are
right?
part of the
Why did her PO tell her to leave social media?
Which is, it's wild.
Good morning, Megan. Thank you for the heart.
I say they are just as extreme as those who follow politics. You have your pro-gypsy and your anti-gypsy, and
she's so proud of that, huh? So proud of that.
It is a serious thing. Like, it's wild.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad you're talking about that sort of intense pressure for you, because watching from the outside, I just thought this young woman has been through so much. They have not had time to heal, develop coping mechanisms, all of those things that really,
thank you for the heart, Conspiracy.
had to do before I was ready to talk about anything that I'd been through publicly. And there are like many, many important distinctions between, your experience.
It's interesting
and mine.
She still calls her a young woman.
I'm not
she wasn't a young woman when she left prison, and she could have been bettering herself better in prison other than talking with a bunch of men.
Since that those events actually sort of happened in my life.
Pretty much.
And I'd had a lot of time to process, and something I
It's almost like Gypsy should stay off social media. Yeah, pretty much. Hey, Toxic Barbie.
Considering telling their story publicly, whether they're a family member.
This podcaster talks a lot.
Is like trying to help them make sure that they're ready for that.
A lot about things that happen to people with Munchausen syndrome by proxy, which
try and tell people, like,
quite simply it wasn't there.
Editorial choices about how we tell the story and what to include. I cannot control how people react. That's just not something that's under my control. And that experience,
this is Lindsay,
smaller level of being on my
I'm sorry,
show,
Lindsay, Andrea, sorry, I was reading. This is Andrea Dunlop. She's the host that did the podcast with Gypsy Rose Blanchards. Nobody should believe me.
They really have a good intention.
Good morning.
Around it. They say, I want to share my story because I want to help other people, and I think that's a really noble intention.
Renegade, projecting her own experiences onto Gypsy.
If that person's not feeling safe and supported in telling that story and feeling like they're really ready. And what I saw with your story was really no one gave you a choice about whether or not you were ready.
I have no
to take
idea
on that position of being this monolithic representation.
Like, there's so many good podcast names for Munchausen syndrome by proxy, because there's so many. It's so intricate.
I was ready to take on at the time, because I'm still even trying to figure out how a curate
Narcissist
works.
interviewing a narcissist. Yep,
how
goth
to
mom.
navigate streaming, because back in prison and before that, we had cable. Streaming
Another, I don't know if it's another.
To be a thing that we didn't even have.
I think this is like
with
the Vial Files, this is like the fourth one, or third actual podcast. Yeah.
When I first got out, I didn't even know how to drive. So that was something that I was navigating too. So it's like all of these normal things I'm just learning. So it's not like I had a foundation to be like, okay, yeah, I'm ready to tackle on being an advocate right now, because I'm still trying to heal myself.
I don't understand that she keeps saying advocate but doesn't do anything. Like, there's nothing that's being done. She's on this podcast obviously trying to do something, but with the podcaster and her not having the truth in it, it's not easy to advocate when you're not telling the truth about something you're advocating towards. You know what I mean? Why does no one look at the evidence before interviewing her? So this was an interview. I want to just reiterate that all this will be on my YouTube, guys, because I know there's people that can't sit and watch or listen or whatever. But this was done. So to my understanding from what Andrea said in the beginning, which I just heard because I didn't hear, I was like starting work and stuff. Basically, they did like a small segment for Lifetime for the last part of her reality show, and Gypsy was asking her questions, which is a very weird concept, and I think that Gypsy's most likely the one that did that, and that's why it wasn't in the show. So then after that wasn't in the show, she ended up reaching back out to her for it. So this is like this is like damage control. I've seen a lot of people say it. It is. It's like damage control. It's like, let me re-up on this, you know? And have you noticed that, like, her stepmom and stuff like that, other than, like, trying to clear Mia's name or whatever she was trying to do with Brie, clear her name possibly, because people were talking about it, I don't feel like they want to continue that. I feel like it's getting old to them. And I feel like eventually a lot of people are just going to get wore out of Gypsy trying to just keep feeding this for what? Because there's so much evidence out. Just my opinion. I'm going to go feed my dog. Listen for a little bit, guys.
I thought about it long and hard, and the fact is that mainstream media, they want the story and to produce the story and put out the story when it's big and it's hot and it's fresh. No one is going to say, okay, I can see that you're not ready. We'll be back in 2-3 years. Whenever you're ready to talk, we'll be here. That's not what they say. That's not how they present it. And so I have kind of thought about choices that I have made, and not necessarily regret, but I feel like I could have done some choices differently for the benefit of my own healing instead of jumping right in.
Instead of money.
You know, as other survivors are thinking about telling their stories publicly, as they're, you know, going on social media and thinking about talking it there, or if they're, you know, doing something that's sort of on a podcast or on a documentary, I mean, what kind of perspective can you offer about the choices that you might have made differently?
I think that if I could have gone back and done things differently, I would have waited to share my story in its entirety until after I've had therapy. Because I started, you know, I'm not saying that I regret writing my memoir. I just kind of feel like the timing of it, I wish I would have gotten intense therapy
So here's the thing, is if she would have went through the therapy that prison offered, that has been confirmed, that Chillicothe prison offered, she could have made those correct decisions in order for her to get out and live the best life that she possibly could before she was doing any of the same shit she was doing in prison, before prison, and all of that shit. So the fact that she's sitting here and saying that she had to wait till after prison to get intense therapy. No, honey, you could have been doing that in prison, but instead your main focus, even though your daddy was sending you enough so you can live for 4 weeks per week, even though he was sending you money, you still felt like you needed more money. So you were talking to men, you were sitting around talking to men, finding boyfriends, finding this, that, and the third. That's on her. That was nothing to do with anything. And she's admitting to some stuff, but she doesn't admit that that's what is the reality of her situation. She can't admit to the faults that she made while in prison. In my opinion.
Or even before writing the manuscript, because there's some things now that I have healed from that I can, maybe elaborate.
Girl has not healed at all.
Or have hindsight.
She's just thought it through a little bit more, and she's like, that lie was horrible. Let me change it. Again, in my opinion,
I am appreciative of all of the media outlets and the producers that have given me a platform to share my story, because I feel like in a sense
share my drama, not your story, your drama.
Be aware of Munchausen by proxy.
A lot of minors.
But it is kind of like at the expense of me. So that's something that now, 2 years later of being free, getting out of prison, I am knee deep in therapy. I am doing the work, and as I'm doing the work, I'm starting to have realizations and understandings, more of my feelings, and give myself that grace. Hold myself accountable for the wrong choices that I've made, but give myself slowly self-forgiveness.
She needs no grace.
But surely replacing
no grace.
So much of my wardrobe with luxury,
zero grace is needed for this. So this is a commercial, guys. Sorry, it's things that happen on a podcast, but yeah.
So I tried
I don't know. I think that with this, I think that she always reiterates therapy, 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 but there's certain things that you have to realize that obviously therapy is not working. For narcissists and people that lie a lot, or people that don't know how to keep things straight, they don't do good in therapy. I believe she's in therapy. I do, because I like to be optimistic in the sense, like, I'll give her a benefit, one benefit, you know? But do I think that it's working? No, because it's not going to work with a narcissist that is continuously lying. You're not going to be able to work through your problems doing that. So either way, even if she don't, we would never know. And even with the couples counseling, there's really nothing that you do internally in couples counseling other than, like, I can see maybe with Ken, but there's nothing you really do to work on yourself as one person. It's in the couple. But, you know, regardless if she does or she doesn't, nothing is working because the patterns are still very clear. Hey Maria, thank you for the heart. Her therapist is gonna need their own therapist after for real.
You know, in addition to sort of the...
Sorry guys, I was trying to...
gossip and the sort of...
Epglis. Before starting Epglis, tell your doctor if you have a parroting Epglis. Tell your doctor if you have a parasitic infection.
Ask your doctor about Epglis.
I have to do commercials because I don't like fast forwarding through it. It's almost done.
As a person who's in this community, your story absolutely...
I love how she says she's in this community.
Have some working understanding of Munchausen by proxy.
I don't understand how.
At least know what it is, because that is certainly, you know, these events happened in my own life, within my own family. You know, I mean, back in the early 2010s was when this situation was happening in my family, and
thank you for the star.
Was, you know, that was before the story of your case, and sort of watching that progression of awareness in the public and in the media has been profound. I mean, that's the thing that when I'm having that, strange dinner party conversation of like, what do you do for a living? I decide to answer that question honestly, instead of just being like, oh, I'm a writer and stuff. But, you know, when I tell people that, and then the minute I say Munchausen by proxy, I mean, almost everyone is like, oh, yeah, the Gypsy Rose Blanchards case.
Yeah,
right?
because
and
everybody's been shoved it. So that's why it's so hard to get everybody to look at the rest of the shit.
Very sensationalized versions of your story that we can kind of talk about. And
she does kind of. She does.
Your story has been
I agree. She gives me, Andrea does give me Melissa Moore vibes for sure.
Didn't choose to be the face of this, and that was not an active choice on your behalf to bring it out of the shadows, and so I just want to recognize that I see where that has come.
You're the second one to say that, Stormy. The podcaster is hard to listen to. I agree.
And I'm sorry that it had to be that way. And just know that within my community of people, the professionals who've been working on it for decades that I've been so lucky to connect with, the survivors, the people that listen to the show, very much rooting for you.
Thank you.
And so obviously...
So I also want to reiterate that she talks about like a lot of people from the Munchausen syndrome by proxy community supporting Gypsy Rose Blanchard. But here's the thing about people in that community. They don't know Gypsy Rose Blanchard. They don't know all of her case. Even the one, and they talk about it here shortly, the one that did her mommy dead dearest thing. He saw a portion of what they wanted him to see in medical records. And those were the only portions that had like a note that Dee Dee was a helicopter mom. But this was during the time that Gypsy was a minor. And Dee Dee was concerned. So... I tried 4 times yesterday to listen to the whole episode and it infuriates me too much. Well, Heather, I will be posting this on my YouTube and we stop and talk about things in between. So I hope it helps a little bit. That's why I do it. Gypsy deserves a life sentence. I agree. Let's continue.
Story has been the subject of, you know, in addition to sort of tabloid gossip and the sort of, writing about you and every single thing you're doing in your romantic relationships and et cetera, has been and on and on and on, has been the subject of a couple of really, substantive documentaries, and dramatization, the act. And I think it has led to this idea that you personally have somehow cashed in this big way.
Gypsy fed TMZ her drama, please. Yup, conspiracy. All her drama. She likes the drama.
You have been involved or not involved in some of these projects directly. Some of these projects happened, to my understanding, without your involvement or even your consent. So can you talk a little bit about how you...
She'll need consent when you're a public figure and you're in a jail and you're property of that state.
Is to be a person who is famous in the context of...
Thank you for the follow.
The victim and an accessory to a crime.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the documentaries, whether I had participated or not, I prefer documentaries compared to
they make her more money
that, Hollywood created. And of course, like The Act, yes, they had some things that was factual, but there was a lot of also things that were fill-ins. So I get
she had a good ideas that she gathered from there.
You lost your hamsters, and I'm like, I never had hamsters. I had cats.
Thank you for the follow.
Joey King is allergic, I think, to cats, so they had to substitute with hamsters. I'm not sure, but I was my first.
So you notice how she says, "I'm not sure," but yeah, she is sure, because you know why? She looked it up. She was looking up the articles for the act. She was looking all that stuff up so she can. So she was looking up all the facts of it. She's lied about things that are even in the act. So it was guinea pigs, Gypsy. Get it right. Toxic Barbie. Heather, thank you for the follow. I appreciate it.
Documentary was Erin Lee Carr's HBO Mommy, Dead and Dearest. And that was already being
see how she name drops
when I took my plea deal. So it was kind of like everybody had done their interview. My parents did their interview. It was already being made. As I was going through
my parents wanted money because they were taking care of me.
All that was left was for me to speak. So on the day that I got sentenced, I gave my interview to that, and I never got to watch it until I was released. So, 'cause we didn't
I know,
have
right?
HBO
Same
in
as
prison.
Bree name drops
So,
Gypsy. You're right, Lottie. You're right.
Have you watched it now?
I have, and I cried. There was a part where I hugged my dad, and I'm like, Daddy, I don't want to go, because I was being sent to prison, and I was just like bawling.
It's never her fault. Yeah. Nothing's ever her
but
fault. The accountability
watching
is
that
at zero with this
that's
one.
the documentary that started it all. Before any
It
of these
started
other
it
ones,
all.
that one was
See
the
how
first
proud
one,
she is
and
of it?
I
But yet
became
she still
well-known.
recluses into the...
But it
oh my
wasn't
God,
until
fame.
the act came out that it threw me into this category that I don't particularly like the term celebrity, because I don't think of myself as that. Especially when you kind of trace back, what are you infamous for? I don't like
for killing
that.
your
It's
mom.
uncomfortable for me. But it did spin me into a category of well-known in the public eye, and I was getting so many
definitely
messages
F-list.
on
Definitely
my
F-list
tablet in
celebrity.
prison, hundreds and hundreds a day.
Daddy wanted her in a
I feel like
mental
I became
institution,
a
not with
character in
him.
a TV
Clock
show.
it.
It was no longer, the documentary had a foundation where it was, okay, let's tell this girl's story. But then the TV show turned me into a TV character. And that was hard to be seen as someone like, you know so much about my life. I don't know you. You're a complete stranger, but you know everything about my life.
She just said that
And
the
then I
act
wanted to do,
wasn't accurate, and then she says they know everything about her life.
About the act.
That don't make no sense.
The producers or the actors or anyone, I mean, did they consult with you? Were you involved in that project at all?
Why would
not
they?
at all. Not at all.
He
actually
literally
that
wanted her to go
project
to
at
a
all.
facility for treatment
Yeah,
inpatient.
and
Indeed.
that has been my understanding, and I will say, like, I don't think that's ethically sound from my perspective.
I don't think it is either.
And, you know,
Why?
I've watched both. I watched a documentary made by Erin.
Okay, so here's the thing. The act was made. Well, Gypsy Rose Blanchard was in the custody of the state. Her information is public record. Therefore, your likeness can be used in doing things like that. Somebody could have made a documentary without her. I don't know any documentary that wasn't without her, because most of them were with her, right? People could have been like, for instance, Fancy. She could have continued after she stopped with the Blanchard. She could have continued on and did a documentary without her. She doesn't need her consent to show all that, because she had already got her consent for the medical records and to show all that stuff. Plus, all the other stuff was public information, and now everything is public information. But the fact that she thinks that she owns the rights to this story, which isn't, again, it's a fictionalized story, and they make sure to put that before and after every episode. And like she said, it's not all the same. But then she says, oh, everybody knows my story. Don't make sense. This is weird. And it's really weird for the podcaster not to call that out either. Jilly Bean, thank you for the heart. I appreciate it. It's not a good story to own. Yeah, definitely not.
She's a tremendously capable director.
20K taps. Keep tapping the screen, guys.
And that they interviewed Dr. Mark Feldman, who's a
Mark Feldman.
close
There you
friend and
go.
colleague, and was really my entry point into talking to people in the professional
She's
sphere
gonna
about this.
fangirl again.
So it felt very different to me. And you know, whenever I'm asked about your case, I sort of if you're gonna watch sort of one thing, sort of either watch the things
Again,
watch the things
he
that
was
you
given
participated in.
limited documentation
Because it
and
did
never
really
even
feel as
interviewed
though,
Gypsy or looked
and
through
actually
any
was-
other case
that
files.
was my first
FYI.
interview about publishing. This was around the time that my novel came out, that was based on my family situation. It was my first time talking about any of it publicly, and I did an interview with Vanity Fair about the act and some of the other things, and was sort of talking about what I felt it got wrong about Munchausen by proxy, and also that I was very frustrated that Patricia
If you were
Arquette,
such a
who
good
plays-
expert, they would
who
have
plays
picked up that
your mom
Gypsy
in
was full of it and lying.
in the
Yeah.
act,
Oh yeah, for sure.
was saying
They're
some
only
things
given
publicly
certain
about Munchausen by
information
proxy
as
that
an
were very
expert on
misleading.
certain things.
And you know,
So
saying,
without
like, well, I just tried to think about
doing
when I'm
certain
worried, my kids are-
research,
and I was just like, oh no, this
it's
is
not really-
like that.
he's
You're
not
giving
really
people the wrong
able
idea
to.
about what this is, and it just became
Yeah, but
clear
he
to
says
me
she had traits
watching
of
the
a
rollout of
psychopath,
that, oh, these people
but
did not
because of
bother
her
and I mean, I know
upbringing.
almost all the main experts on this now.
So,
They
yeah.
didn't talk to any of those people. They didn't reach out to Mark Feldman. They didn't reach out to Bjork or
I
Mary
heard he
Sanders.
stopped
Or,
looking
you know,
at
they
her
just
file.
didn't
No,
do
he was only
due
given a
diligence. And
portion,
it's like,
is what I've
here, there
heard
is
about
this
it.
moment of maximum visibility for this abuse.
Ryan
and
both
again,
do a
it's not
podcast
fair
around
to
the
make your
same
monolith
time.
for that, but nonetheless,
Ryan did a
here
podcast?
it is. It's on this big stage. They had this huge opportunity, because that was a huge hit for Hulu. That was the most popular show that had been on Hulu at the time. And I was like, they're doing press about this. You know, Patricia Arquette's doing it, Joey King's doing it, the producer's doing it. They have this unprecedented opportunity
It
to
was-
just say something real
So
and smart.
she the host of this gets upset because, like, with the act, they don't talk about like Munchausen syndrome by proxy. It's a show. Like, they made this show because of the actors and because of the storyline and to sell. They didn't make this show in regards to, like, I could see if they came out and they're like, yeah, we're doing this to bring awareness to Munchausen syndrome by proxy and bring awareness to kids and stuff. They didn't say that or do that. And Hulu never does that for anything. So why would they start then? Just because you think that it's ethically wrong for them to use a likeness of a convicted schmurder?
Munchausen by
Yeah.
proxy, and they absolutely did not. And
Missed the mark.
Exactly. It was a
for sure, absolutely
dramatization.
missed the mark. And
Missed the
and
mark.
then also, you know,
Missed
when
the
I
mark
found out
for
that
sure.
you
Did
were
you
not
hear her
involved,
in the
not
background?
compensated, that's not, like, just to say to all of my true crime fellow creators, and you know, we make decisions about
Twice with the same lady?
There have been instances where we
That's
have
weird.
told details about someone's story and they weren't involved.
Sarah
That is one of the most
Fraser.
difficult
That's the
ethical
one that
dilemmas we have on
Ryan
the show,
did him.
and the
That's
only
weird.
reasons we've
That's
gone
even
forward with
weirder
it
behavior,
was
honestly.
because we felt like it was important to protect the children in that situation, and otherwise I wouldn't do it. And there was no such there's no such argument for the act, right? That was just taking the most sensational sort of version
I think
of that
it did
story,
miss a mark, but not
dramatizing
the
it for
reason this
entertainment
podcaster
purposes
thinks.
and
Yes, Heather.
money, right? And none of which went back to you, to any survivors. Like, there might have been a
Wait
net benefit
to
again,
what
just,
she
like,
says
from
here, guys.
awareness about Munchausen by proxy existing, but like there was no intentionality from the creators of the act to do anything more with it than tell a story.
No, not at all. I will say that I want to say maybe it was 2 years later after the act was created. One of the producers, I don't remember which one because it has been some time, but he understood that I was done really wrong, and he did. Again, this was not compensation for the show. It was his own money that he set in a trust fund for me because he acknowledged how wrong it was.
That's not
And
acknowledging
he
it
told
was
me,
wrong.
he's like, "I
Those are
can't
called
speak on the
a residual
logistics
portion,
of
so they
it,
can
but I
use
can tell you
her
this
for
is from
it.
my heart. This is what I want to do.
because that's
This
what
is
comes
for
2
you."
years
And
after.
I told him, "Thank
Royalties,
you so much,"
a little,
and-
like a
and
portion
that
of
was
royalties.
that.
So they gave her like
That was very
5%
kind.
because she didn't do
Yeah,
nothing.
I think we can recognize.
And like
that
she
as
just
an
said, it was a
individual
fictionalized show. It
choice,
was
to
wrong.
write
There was wrong parts of it. It wasn't
probably-
supposed to
probably
be
wasn't entirely his fault, but
correct. It was
sounds
supposed to be
that to me
dramatized.
speaks to a recognition
Yeah, it was a
of
pacifier
why
because
that
she was
production
complaining
not
about
able
it.
to begin with.
She was online complaining about
And
it and
so
telling
you've,
people about it and on
you've had
documentaries
some
about it.
projects sort of starting, filming when you were sort of towards
Hold on,
the end
guys.
of your prison sentence, and then with this Lifetime series that kind of followed you. So yeah, I mean, what's your experience of that been like, and why did you decide that this was the sort of the next move was reality television for you? Okay.
It wasn't something that I was expecting necessarily, because I did the Prison Confessions of Gypsy Rose Blanchard, and it was our Lifetime documentary. We finished that, but there was the option for the network to kind of pick up more episodes post prison, and so we just kind of went on with it. So it was like a continuation on the original Prison Confessions.
I think Cosmo went out on the gate.
And then it
Sorry,
became
guys.
its own like second season and stuff like this. So it kind of was a docu-follow. And
Docu-follow.
It was wonderful to film.
Did she just
we
make
had
that
a
up?
great
Bethany, thank
cast,
you for the
crew,
heart.
producers. Everybody was so lovely to work with. And it was something that showcased that it was like a time capsule of what I was going through post-prison.
So I want to say this. I was arguing with this one girl that gets inaccurate information on TikTok all the time. And I'm posting a video later about it. But Life After Lockup, Gypsy Rose Blanchard, was not the same as the show Life After Lockup. So there's a show called Life After Lockup, and it basically follows people that get out of prison or jail, serve some time, get out, and see how they acclimate into the world. Those two shows are not the same. They're two different networks. The one with Gypsy Rose Blanchard it's called Life After Lockup, but they slap Gypsy Rose Blanchard on it, and they basically have it on a different network. I had this girl keeps telling me, she's like, I've watched this for seasons. This was just a season. I'm like, no, it wasn't a season. This was like Gypsy's own show. Totally different show. Yeah, very confused. This girl, I've tried to help her. She spews misinformation all the time, and I'm really tired of it, honestly. So it is not the same show. This is not the same show. There was 2 seasons of the Life After Lockup. And then they did, so there was 3 seasons. So they did the first season before, and then when she got out, and then they did the second season when she had left Ryan or whatever, and then they did that 3rd season essentially there was 3 seasons, but they kind of split them into 2 different shows. The names are very similar, but it is not the same show. Okay?
Yeah, and you know,
I am not a
watching
Gypsy
that,
hater.
I'm so
I do
glad
not
to hear that
hate
you had a
Gypsy.
good experience with the producers and the production, because I think that makes, you know, that makes all the difference, right? And like, and people's intentions and how they want to present the story. You know, you have, I think, being on the production side, you recognize that you have a lot of power over how that person's story is presented. So I'm glad you felt like they used that well and that it served you well. And I think it seemed.
I
it
don't
seemed
know
very
her.
clear
I would
me
have to know
why it would be
somebody
important
to like
for you
hate
after
them,
all
you
of
know?
that, after the act and all of that kind of thing.
I know her
to
enough
tell
to
your story
highly
in your own
dislike
words
her.
and really wrest some control over the narrative.
Yeah. Yeah, it was nice to be able to just kind of like
Yeah,
show
and facts on facts.
the good and
Exactly.
the bad of me. It's kind of like, yeah, I made some good choices, I made some achievements. You know, it showcased, you know, unfortunately, you know, me going through my divorce and things like that, but that's all real stuff. It's like my life is no longer about
Yeah, that she married
prison
Ryan
and,
to get out
you
of
know,
prison just so she
necessarily
can
the
run
trauma of my
into
past. It's kind of like everything that
Ken's
I'm going
arms,
through
pretty
on a daily
much.
basis.
30K,
my
thank you guys
current
for the
And
tabs.
so I wanted the opportunity to show people like, okay,
Pushing
this
out
is-
factual
this is me,
information
who I
to
am
combat
today.
lies is
Love
not
me, hate me.
hate.
These are my choices. They might
Yes.
not always be right, but they're real.
They might not always be right, but they're real. That was a mouthful right there, don't you think? That was a mouthful for her. Simply Me, thank you so much for the heart. I appreciate it. Another commercial, but you know, just same shit, different day. So like with Kale Lowry's podcast, she based everything just on Gypsy's book. Like Gypsy didn't just write that book. Again, if you guys listen over on my YouTube channel, if you guys go, I read all of Gypsy's book and all of Melissa G. Moore's book. Melissa G. Moore wrote a portion of that book. You cannot tell me any different. Okay? You can't.
I'm letting go of the worry that I wouldn't get my new contacts in time for this class.
Still a commercial, guys. So, but I will be posting this over on my YouTube channel. Be sure you are subscribed. Ashtootrippy. So go and check it out, guys. Go and check it out. And just as a reminder, on Wednesdays we will be live over on YouTube. So just an FYI, guys.
Your mom and kind of some of the misperceptions that I think are really will really probably resonate with a lot of fellow survivors.
I didn't finish it either.
So you've said in interviews that, you know, it's important to you that people don't see or characterize your mother as a monster. And that's something that really resonates with me. So how should we see people like your mom? What's a better framing?
I think a better framing, and keep in mind that I do go through lots of emotions, and I have mixed
Doesn't seem like
emotions
it.
about this topic
So which character is
on
on
a
the
daily.
podcast?
So one day I could say I don't feel like we should categorize.
She
her
dropped
that way,
those
and the other day
after
I'm still healing, so
she
I'm
was
like,
done using
she
them
was
with
terrible, and I talk a lot of crap. But
with the
at the end
autistic
of the
man,
day,
you know?
I think, you know, taking my emotions out of it and just working on facts alone, I think that, you know, my mom grew up in a time where mental health was not talked about. It was not addressed. Things, whenever it comes to your emotions
But she
and your
was
mental
seen
health,
she was seen by
just
the
swept under
doctors
the
on a
rug.
constant basis.
So I think it's so vastly important for people to recognize that individuals like this are normally people with low self-esteem, and I feel like
she's categorizing
given
her mother into
support
something
and
that she wasn't
therapy
in.
and the acknowledgement that this is an issue that they have, it can
When
be
did
addressed
Dee ever
and
display low
possibly treated.
self-esteem?
You know, I feel like they're not monsters. And I asked you this question, you know, last year whenever we got to have our chat. I asked you because it was a question that plagued me for so long. Was my mother aware that what she was doing was wrong?
No,
And
because
you
she
told
wasn't
me
wrong in
that,
doing what
yes,
she was doing.
aware. And of course, I went through my own emotions after that call. But
There's a lot of therapy in those words for
that
her.
is something that is hard for survivors. It's a hard pill to swallow. And it's something that, no, we can't sweep under the rug.
Is she
that
technically
they are,
considered a
you know, they
survivor?
are
Would you
aware
guys
of
think
it,
she
but
is?
Maybe you can correct me. Is it something that they cannot control, and then therefore therapy needs to be the intervention? Because I think that, you know, these people are humans, whether their actions are wrong or right, or justified, not justified. They are humans, and they are someone's loved one. You know, they are someone's mother, they're someone's father, they're someone's caregiver.
Yeah, you
they're
killed.
someone. to
Yeah,
someone.
you killed that woman that was your
I
mother.
know that sounds rich coming from me, but
It really does.
it's just part of it.
I mean, it's extremely complex, and you know what you're expressing.
It's not very complex,
Those
Andrea.
are feelings I've gone through about my own sister. I asked that question of Dr. Mark.
She talks a lot about
when I first
herself
met him.
too.
Does she know? Do people who do this understand what they're doing? Because I think it's a much more comforting idea to think, oh, no, they really believe their kid's sick, or they're, you know, they're confused, or they're having this sort of mental health issue that makes them sort of not culpable for their behavior, right? Because it's really horrible to think about someone doing this in a calculated,
It is. It's really
premeditated
horrible.
way.
But that's not what was
that is the
happening here.
reality, and I think it's
Dee Dee
like,
was not
we can
diagnosed
still
with
face
Munchausen
that
syndrome by
reality
proxy. She
and
wasn't even
preserve the
diagnosed with, like,
humanity of everyone
depression.
involved. And I think that's important, because I think when we make
Or
monsters out
anxiety.
of perpetrators of crimes, we're holding it
Like,
at a
what?
distance, right? Like, as watchers, we're saying, well, that would never happen to anyone I know. That would never happen in my family. That would never happen in my neighborhood. That would never be a mom that's on my PTA. And the reality
It's
of
so
what we know
unethical
about
for this lady
case
to
now
have
is
this
that it
podcast and
absolutely
give herself
could be, you know,
this
your
title,
family
zero
member,
credentials.
in your
Indeed.
situation, you know, your mom did have a history of abuse and came from, you know, I think, as you've
A
really
history of
revealed,
abuse.
a family of some pretty significant dysfunction in her own right. My sister
A
didn't.
history of
Hope Pamela
abuse.
didn't. There's many
According to
perpetrators that there's
Gypsy,
some perpetrators
and
that
only
come from
Gypsy.
abusive backgrounds. There's some that don't. It isn't this sort of like cyclical thing that it is in some other forms of abuse. And so
Her mom was looking for answers.
you know,
Why do
I
these
think
people
it's
ignore
important to
Gypsy's
grapple with
microdeletion?
it.
I know.
I think
She even
there is
says, I don't
pieces
know
that
too much
really we
about
have
your
to kind of
microdeletion.
tease out when we're talking about, it's not a single intervention. There's the question of like, can this person be treated? And I know you're going to have a conversation with Dr. Marie Sanders, who's a dear friend, and I think we were talking about also setting you up with Dr. Kathy Ayub to maybe have a conversation for this show, which I think would be really helpful to you. But
So that's the girl
you know,
in her
it's
first
like
podcast
treatment
episode.
is very, very challenging. But
That
this,
first
very
girl she
challenging.
mentioned,
There's gonna
so-
the reality is there's going to be a very small number of perpetrators who are going to acknowledge their behavior, and that's the first step for treatment. So there is a treatment model. There are steps they can take, but it's a lifelong recovery process. It's, you know, and it's unlikely. I think we can assume that, like, yes, we should look at treatment.
You
We should
okay?
always hold that space. And we have to be kind of realistic about that. And then I think there's the totally separate question of, is this a person who is safe around children? And you can still preserve someone's humanity and say, but okay, you've crossed some lines here where we're not going to take chances leaving children alone.
I haven't really
And
looked her
I
up that
wanted to
much,
ask
Pancakes.
you,
I guess
you know, because this is a
Fancy
question I
did
think
her
that it's
research.
really
I guess
important
she's
to me
well
as
known in the
any
Munchausen
survivor.
syndrome by proxy
Like, dealing with child
community.
abuse is quite
Somebody
complicated
commented
as a
that, and I was
society,
like, I don't watch
right? When is
Fancy.
it better to remove the child from that situation?
but I'm gonna
Give
look her
someone
up
a
for
second
sure.
chance. What interventions do we use? Just speaking for you, not on behalf of all Munchausen, by proxy survivors everywhere. What do you wish had happened?
This woman is
in
supplying
your
Gypsy with
situation?
more to
I
use to
wish
spread
that my
lies.
mom would
Yep.
have been caught early on, because if there could have been something that she got caught alive.
Yes, Pancakes. Do some
something
digging.
I could have been
I'm gonna look
removed
up too
from her care
and see.
put
I've
in
heard
the
some
care of
things
my
though.
dad,
There's been some chatter.
and that would have avoided so much, because you know, a lot of people.
Let me
maybe
let me just put it this way, okay? If Gypsy Rose Blanchards' mother really had Munchausen syndrome by proxy, they would have asked Gypsy to do a bunch of things in regards to Munchausen syndrome by proxy. She would have been doing conventions, much like her mother was doing conventions on the microdeletion that was found from Gypsy and all of the medical issues that Gypsy encountered along the way. Just saying.
maybe not the the true supporters and the people in our community.
In
but there
our
are
community.
naysayers that don't even acknowledge me as a survivor because they feel that
She's not a survivor.
I was diagnosed with microdeletion 1Q21.1, and they sort of say, well, you were sick. You were a sick child. Therefore, she didn't have Munchausen by proxy. Or she was never formally diagnosed with Munchausen by proxy. So how are we labeling it that? And maybe you can speak to that a little bit.
Let's hear.
Yeah, I can, and that's something that we talked about a little bit when we talked for your show. That's a really common misperception / bad faith argument, depending on who's making it. Because there are people who are very invested in the idea that this just isn't a real form of abuse, and so that is an argument that they use.
Okay, so let me stop her there. She says that it's not a form of, I believe that it is a form of abuse. I really do. I believe that there's parents out there that make their children sick so they can take them to the doctor and they can get attention and they can give that child attention and they can feel like they're wanted. I 125% believe that Munchausen syndrome by proxy is an actual mental disorder.
So number one, there is no, it's a complete false argument that if a child has a real health condition, that means that is sort of exculpatory, right? That means abuse is not happening. Of course abuse can happen if a person has a real thing, because...
Okay. And her second thing, right, that she explains. So she basically says, oh, it's completely false that if somebody is diagnosed with something, they can't have Munchausen syndrome. That's not the argument that people have. The fact of the matter is that Gypsy was seen by many doctors. Dee Dee was seen by many doctors. There was no evidence of it. Every single thing that was done to Gypsy Rose Blanchard was because of her microdeletion. And that's why it is explained. So for her to say, oh, you can't have one or the other, no, you can't. You can have Munchausen syndrome by proxy and have a rare genetic disorder all in the same time. But the fact that it wasn't happening here is the point.
Munchausen by proxy abuse encompasses exaggerating, inducing, and fabricating, illnesses in a child. And so I don't know anything about your genetic condition that you do have, but I would guess that quite a lot.
And hint that goes with all of this is she says, I don't know a lot about your genetic condition. This genetic condition has been studied a lot, and she could have just looked it up and seen that everything that Gypsy Rose Blanchard has had proof of doing was to do with her microdeletion.
The interventions that your mom, applied had nothing to do with your condition. And
they actually did.
It doesn't mean that they can't make it worse. And we know, and also, so there's that, and that comes up a lot, right? Like a lot of perpetrators will say, well, I got this diagnosis from a doctor. Well, okay, but if you got that diagnosis from a doctor and you use deception to do it, well, then that's abuse. And even if...
So she's saying, so basically she's framing this in a way that she's using deception to get a diagnosis from the doctor. No deception was used to use. This is what Gypsy currently has. There was no deception used to obtain any kind of diagnoses. And there was no kind of deception used because she actually stopped seeing doctors after she got that diagnosis. So let's keep going here.
That diagnosis is real if you were making the condition worse, if you were lying to doctors about symptoms, if you were pushing for unnecessary interventions.
Yes.
Those things are all still abuse. So abuse can absolutely still happen.
And yes, absolutely, abuse can absolutely still happen with those instances. But it didn't in this case is the point.
With a child that has a real condition, and that's just a complete misunderstanding of this abuse to say that it can't. And as to the second thing of being formally, diagnosed, your mom was not criminally convicted and she's not formally diagnosed. There is still evidence of abuse.
None.
Because of your experience, because of what doctors have reported.
Literally only Gypsy's experience. Doctors, again, have only reported in 2 incidences in Gypsy Rose Blanchard's medical records that not Gypsy, but Dee Dee was a quote-unquote helicopter mom. So there was never any deceptions. All of this stuff was done. Not to mention the thing that a lot of people like to leave out is that This was all done on Medicaid. Anybody that knows about Medicaid knows how hard it is to fight to actually get something done that is medically necessary. Medicaid would not have paid if this stuff was medically necessary. None of what this woman is saying is factual in this portion. Well, her whole podcast, in my opinion, but hey.
Because of what's in your medical records. And that is actually typically...
She was also young
I'm
when that was
curious
put
to know
in,
about
too.
Your process of how you were able to put a name to it. But, you know, that is, I think, again, a misunderstanding of Munchausen by proxy being primarily this diagnosis, you know, the psychiatric diagnosis of factitious disorder imposed on another. It is in the DSM, but like, it's abuse, it's a crime, and there either is evidence of that crime or there is not evidence of that crime. And in your case, there is evidence of the crime of your mother's abuse, and therefore there is no legitimate question of whether or not you said.
I would love to hear what evidence that she has seen that her mother had Munchausen syndrome by proxy, other than all of her friends that are in the Munchausen syndrome by proxy community doing documentaries and talking to Gypsy herself outside of that. That's just what I would like to know, because she just says there's so much evidence, but then doesn't mention even one thing. Mentions 3 reasons why somebody would say that Dee Dee wasn't diagnosed, which again, you can't formally diagnose somebody with Munchausen syndrome by proxy without studying their brain. We know Dee Dee's brain was not studied. Okay? She was never on medication for bipolar or anxiety or depression or anything. She took some sleeping meds. We know she had diabetes. We know that she had severe gout before Gypsy took her life. There was a lot of instances that we knew about. But Munchausen syndrome by proxy or any kind of mental health issues were just not present. And that's a fact. Because they didn't study her brain. And she wasn't diagnosed prior. You can't diagnose somebody after they're deceased.
Yes. And anyone who's saying that there is at this point, as your story has been well explored, you know,
not by you apparently.
Mark Feldman obviously participated in the documentary. He's as
and then
of an expert as there
he
is.
brings
there
in
is no legitimate question
Fieldman
about that.
again. He was only given limited documentation.
Obviously,
would love to hear from him again with all of the
situation,
information
you understood
that he can
that
find.
something was wrong, something bad was happening. When did you first discover that this was a thing called Munchausen by proxy? What was that?
When my lawyer said you should lie about it,
you know what's
just
so
lie.
interesting is,
in my opinion,
when I was living in the abuse, I didn't even know that it was abuse. I thought my mom's weird, my mom's overbearing, controlling. It's like,
really? And you made all those videos because your mom was overbearing and controlling? And you got to play dress up and get mailed sex toys?
You know, everybody was like,
what?
Why didn't you tell someone? Why didn't you ask for help? It was that I was saying things like, don't tell my mom this, but I'm telling you this, or my mom's a little controlling. She's a helicopter mom. But I didn't have the language to articulate, I'm being abused. This is what's going on.
So you were just talking about how one of the things people have said to you is sort of like, why didn't you speak up? Which, by the way, is an unfair expectation to put on any child that's being abused or any young.
Let me stop it there. It's not unfair to put it on a child because one Gypsy Rose Blanchard was not a child. She was actually an adult majority of this time. Not only that, the reason they ask is because she was online making numerous videos, going on dating sites, and doing all this other stuff. So that's why people ask. Just an FYI.
Person that's in an abuse situation, especially one as complicated as Munchausen by proxy.
Which Dee Dee didn't have.
So you were saying that, like, you were making comments sometimes to people in your life, and there were obviously signs. There were obviously red flags for what was happening to you. And I have to believe that, like, if, you know, your dad in particular understood what Munchausen by proxy looked like.
Her dad didn't want her.
If the doctors who were treating you, which we'll talk about in a moment, had understood what Munchausen by proxy was, there might have been some more intervention, but that should never be put on the person who's being victimized, especially because how intense the psychological manipulation is. Like victims in the midst of this are often not.
Now, here's one thing. I will never discredit that there was possibly some mental abuse. Like, I do feel like Dee Dee got frustrated and there was some kind of like mental verbal abuse. I do feel like that was something that may have been brewing for a little bit. I don't ever discredit Gypsy for that, but psychologically she wasn't being abused. Psychologically she was abusing herself because she was a psychopath that was saying, oh, I can't feel my legs, and they were trying to figure out why she can't feel her legs, and then come to find out that there was also other issues that had to be addressed because this could be something more. I feel like a lot of people give me hate for that, but that's one thing that I truly do believe. I do believe that it was hard. I feel like Gypsy Rose Blanchard and Dee Dee Blanchard, I feel like their life was hard. And for more than multiple reasons, more than Gypsy, more than Dee Dee, more than anything, I think it was just hard. And I do feel like there was some possible just mental abuse, not like physical in any way. That's just my opinion. It's always been my opinion. It's okay to disagree.
Have that framing. And so we can't expect victims to be like, hey, I'm being victimized in this specific way. Here's the intervention. Please execute it on my behalf.
Right, exactly. And so it's like my father, he didn't understand what Munchausen by proxy was before all this happened. Obviously to some degree, I think my mother did. But as for myself, I didn't understand. I never heard of Munchausen by proxy before. It was not something that I ever read about, heard about,
you didn't go
watched
through
a TV
it.
show about. So it wasn't
You
until
didn't go through it.
after being arrested that, I'm sitting there having an attorney visit with my public defender, and I'm just, telling him all of this stuff, still in my frame of reference of not having the language to explain what I was going through. But he was able to get a lot of what was going on from medical records. I mean, the first thing that flagged it is I could walk.
Right.
It's like, it's not like he had...
The first thing that flagged it was I can walk. Okay, yeah, you could walk. People knew you could walk. You told people you can walk. You told Nicholas Godejohn, the autistic man that you conned into helping kill your mom, allegedly, because I do believe it was help. You told him that you have been faking walking so your mom can love you. You told Dan, you told Aaliyah, you told everyone. People said they had seen you walk out of the house before. They have seen you. You did not act. You weren't a very good actress. You weren't acting like a paraplegic, okay? So that was not the first evidence, okay? First and foremost. Second of all, Mike Stanfield was like, yo, I need to make this happen for my legal career. So this is Munchausen syndrome by proxy. After she meets with her public defender, Mike Stanfield, that is when the Munchausen syndrome by proxy diagnosis starts becoming evident, which is very evident in showing that y'all, like, it's there. It's there.
To dig and try to find this out, it was pretty easy by just looking at the fact that I could walk, and then kind of like where she could walk. So how is
She skipped over
how
a
is this
lot.
happening? Because she's supposedly paralyzed. So
Yeah, according to you, Miss
Yeah,
Jip.
I think, yours is a case where it's not always this obvious. Yours is a case that was pretty obvious. I think that's almost like the classic thing, right?
Not very
of like,
obvious.
A couple things that came up in your case, right? The sort of like, oh, they have these alleged issues with eating that are not real. They're in a wheelchair and they can't move
Very.
except that they can. I think the other thing I wanted to ask you about, because you were technically, chronologically,
I have
an
both,
adult
thanks.
when those events took place. There is kind of there are these sort of like two points where interventions
Right.
could have happened to prevent the worst possible outcome.
Thank you, Lottie.
And one of them is when you're
Oh,
a
the
child,
motorcycle
right? And then you're
accident
talking
narrative?
about
Yep.
child welfare and an intervention that involves custody and that kind of thing. And obviously, in your case, that didn't happen, and I'm so sorry that didn't happen. You deserved better. You didn't deserve to be left in that situation. And then there's this other period where you're an adult, but obviously part of your story is that you were deceived about your actual age, and deceived about your abilities to live an independent life. And that's a very common
Now those are
part
haters.
of this dynamic, is that I've seen many, teenagers, young adults, their parent will try everything to keep them under their control, under their roof. They will convince them that they will never be able to live an adult life. That's an extremely common part of this story. And so I think that's another thing that people are really not aware of, is that you are not out of the woods once you are, physically grown. And so, you had a couple of attempts to leave.
Here we go.
Before you
First one
got
today.
together
I
with
know.
Nick
I thought we were
and
gonna get it
all of
way
that.
earlier, so we're almost done with
Can
this.
you give us some
So
insight on, that piece of the experience?
I know
and,
they really do think
you
they
talked
eat, huh?
about
It's
what
so
you wish someone
funny.
had done when you were a child. What about during that period? What would have helped you get safely out of that situation once you were no longer a child?
Absolutely. That's a question that, and that's
She wasn't a child,
weight
first of
that
all.
I put on
So.
myself
Again,
is that, when I was a
reiterating it.
child, it's kind of like, okay, I'm helpless. There's very little that I can do. And then once I became an adult, the power dynamic sort of shifts and the blame sort of shifts, I guess, even on my own shoulders. It's kind of like a coulda, shoulda, woulda thing. And so, yes, there were many times that I probably could have ran away. I did attempt twice, failed attempts. There were times that I could have called the police, but was too afraid to. But at the
She
end of
wanted
the day,
that house.
I do feel like
She felt like it was
even
hers.
though I was
My opinion,
an
of course.
adult, I was working with a maturity level that was not up to date with my chronological age.
Okay, so she said she was working with a maturity level that wasn't up to date with her chronological age, okay? That is not true. They did a power of attorney, and they determined that Gypsy Rose Blanchard was coherent and adult enough to sign her own paperwork. So that is completely false information. Somebody basically went in and examined her to say that she is not mentally handicapped and she is not functioning at a lower age, because if she was, her mom would have power of attorney and her mom would be the one signing all of her documents. It was not her mom. Gypsy Rose Blanchard signed all of her medical documents, including all of her like surgeries and stuff like that she obtained, including the one for her teeth that she always gets out about. So was always legally competent. Exactly.
So yes, I was 24 when I got arrested, but mentally and emotionally my development was stunted. So I could have been, a teenager
Not true.
in that mind frame. Because of zero life experience.
So what's
most people
now?
mature and grow with what?
So this is another thing that she says, people mature and grow with life experience. I know a lot of people, including myself, that I did not live my life and grow up as a teenager like all other teenagers my age did. I did not go to school. I was at home a lot. I hardly had friends. But I mentally matured by literally learning the things that I need to, not focusing on things I knew I didn't need to. So that is not an excuse to not mentally or even anything to be like, to not be emotionally like that. There's no excuse for that. There's a lot of people that grew up like that. There's a lot of people that have phobias that grew up like that. And again, during that time when I was a teenager, mental health was not one of the things that people looked at very much. So this is another way that Gypsy kind of slipped through the cracks of things, because they weren't looking at her mental diagnosis, they were looking at her physical diagnosis.
Life experience. So if you don't have that as your foundation, you're not working up to date with your age, I guess.
Not true.
And you don't think about these
all.
alternatives. And so for me, I just kind of wish that I would have had the language to say, hey, I think my mom has Munchausen by proxy. I wish I would have heard of it back
She
then.
wanted the language, but yet she was making all of these videos about master and dom and all of this other stuff. So she technically had the language to say, hey, my mom is abusing me. I don't feel like I am sick. Simple.
So I could have told someone.
Again, just my
it's
opinion.
Kind of like hindsight's 2020, and I can't go back now. So it's just
Can't go back now.
No, and I don't think it's, the purpose of sort of asking you about that is not about your personal regrets or what have you. I mean, I think it's really healthy that you take accountability for your actions. I think
no
that's
accountability is being
appropriate,
taken,
and I think
Andrea.
that framing for people and
None.
their understanding of this story.
Zero.
And
we have an understanding of the story, girl.
Because I think if people are projecting what they themselves might have been like at 24, right? Like when I was 24, I was in my, first job in New York City after graduating college. When I was
Look at what that woman was doing when she was 24. When I was 24, I had a 3-year-old and I was about to be pregnant with my second son, but I still hadn't experienced that much life. So again, all false information.
22 and had all kinds of like
she does
healthy
talk a lot.
systems,
She talks
and
more
was
than Gypsy Rose
encouraged to be
Blanchard.
independent by my
So
parents and had all
it's
kinds of
very evident that
experiences
she's
with
doing
peers
this
that
for
develop,
herself. In
it's
my
just like
opinion, of
all
course.
those
There you go.
things are purposefully kept from Munchausen by proxy survivors in the vast majority of in many cases, especially like sort of the cases on the extreme ends. They're not in school. They're not allowed to have relationships with peers. They're not allowed to have romantic relationships and develop all of those things and try things and fail and develop a sense of independence. And they're often told, which I believe you were in your case, you'll never live an independent life. You'll always need me.
She wasn't told
and
that.
You're going to die young. And so that's like, they create a very purposeful terror of the outside world.
I wonder,
so
well, Gypsy reached out to her, so I don't think there was money exchanged. Podcasts don't usually pay.
Misunderstanding of the situation. And I don't know.
This really sends a bad message. Hold on, I want to read this. This really sends a bad message to the MBP community. Sounds like justifying the crime. Steffers, I cannot agree more. I totally agree with you. This woman wants to act, and again, I don't know too much about her. I will be looking her up, so will Pam Cakes, she has stated. But this just shows like a negative sense in the Munchausen syndrome by proxy community. I have talked with a lot of people that have dealt with family members or their own parents or their own guardians having Munchausen syndrome by proxy. And a majority of people that I have talked to that have actually dealt with it do not believe Gypsy Rose Blanchard. So how does a doctor that's seeing very few of the case files believe this, and all these people in this said community, how do they all believe this when they haven't seen all the evidence, when they haven't took into account that Dee Dee was not diagnosed with any kind of mental health issues? I would love to know that. I would love to know
Giving you
it.
some helpful resources. Truthfully, I don't know, because there are plenty of police that don't even understand that this is a crime when it involves a small child. So having an adult call them and say, I'm in this situation, I don't know.
That could have been intervention. such as, my mother claimed that I
Exactly, Heather.
was homeschooled. And as a small child, yes, she did homeschool me for a small time, but then she became.
Then how does she know how to write or
got to
read
the point where she
or get on the
didn't want
internet?
to anymore, and there was, she was telling the doctors in the hospital, "Oh, she's homeschooled. Her homeschool, we call it Angel Heart Academy, and give them that information, but it was never registered.
They don't ask for that information,
with
by
an
the way.
actual school district, and it was never followed up with.
It wouldn't
and so
be.
that was something that I fell through the cracks with. So it's kind of like, yes.
That was not something that she fell through the cracks with, because in the homeschool systems, no, they do not. So Heather, I was homeschooled for most of my life. Started in around middle school, and then, like middle school-ish, and then I went through high school. The only thing that of course I would do school at home, and I would do certain things. There came a point where I started doing it by myself because my mom was more preoccupied with other things. But back then, when all of this took place, back in the earlier 2000s, that did not take place. You can put down that somebody was homeschooled, and doctors, that's just not something that was checked, because it was something that if a parent said that they were homeschooled, that's something that they had the responsibility to do. But back then, homeschools did not have the tests and the things that are used to document children now, because that literally started like during COVID era, maybe a little before. And it also depends on where you live. But this is something that back in that time frame of that she would have been going to school, like in high school in early 2000s, she would have not gotten any kind of checkup or like call or anything like that. I ended up getting my GED, which is what Gypsy ended up doing, but in prison. But that's just how it was back then. And again, I mean, it really does depend on where you live and stuff. But I think people look at the way homeschool is now and use that as a blueprint when it really was not like that. So there wouldn't have been any red flags to do with schooling wise, because they knew she was sick.
School districts could have helped had I been, aligned with that, with real homeschooling or something. And then there's just other avenues and other things that could have been those points in which intervention could have happened. And it's just like falling through the cracks of every single one of them.
Yeah, and it's deliberate, right? I mean, that isolation is deliberate, and the homeschooling thing comes up in so many, not just Munchausen by proxy cases, but other abuse situations where, and of course there are many, homeschool families and homeschool parents that are not abusive. But unfortunately, it creates for opportunistic abusers, it creates a situation where you don't have the child exposed to the outside world.
Yeah, some districts offer religious exceptions
right?
too.
And a lot of reports about Munchausen by proxy come.
Yeah, there was a lot of books in the home. There was a lot of books in the home, and she did learn. There was weekly lesson plans that Dee Dee would do for like neighborhood kids too.
And they're observing.
We've heard that from neighbors
for longer periods during the day. My oldest is in school. She's at school all day long, right? If I was telling the school, oh, she has
that's
this
now.
seizure disorder.
Back then it was different, guys. It was so different back then.
Being a normal
Wasn't
child
like
during
that.
the day, they're gonna have an inkling that something is up. So that is, I think, a part of the reason why they keep them out of school, right? They don't want other eyes on the child. And I think like eyes on the child is always healthy for the child. I don't think there's any argument for a child being isolated at home with one parent.
I'm gonna stop this woman right now for saying I don't think that should be a thing or whatever. One, we're after COVID. A lot of things have changed after COVID. There is things that kids are homeschooled a lot after COVID. Let me tell you that I suffered with generalized anxiety disorder, and I really didn't go out of my house. So unfortunately for me, the less people I seen during my diagnosis period of having my anxiety and trying to figure out what exactly this was, it was to my benefit. So for her to sit here and generalize that everybody needs to grow up in school and going to school and not being homeschooled and not being with one parent or not being with a parent and a sibling and trying to justify that is wrong. My opinion, but wrong.
You know, even in situations where, you know, children have profound disabilities, you know, we hear from those parents, and we have, you know, a fair number of parents of disabled kids that listen to the show. So I've, you know,
it was actually good that
talked to them
Gypsy
and
didn't
heard their feedback
socialize,
is that
actually.
they really try so hard to have their children have normal experience, you know, quote, sort of normal experiences, you know, or just like interactions with their peers, have as much of a life outside of their medical situations as possible. And so, like, there's just no scenario, I think, where having a child be isolated that profoundly could ever be good for a child.
Right. I agree.
Yeah. And so, you know, you were in a situation which is, again, very common.
She didn't do her homework
where
at all.
Doctors
Did not.
clearly suspected abuse. You know, the doctors who spoke.
Clearly,
in the
you mean
documentary
like there was a couple notes?
describe this, you know,
And
one
you
of
mean
them,
the
I believe,
doctor,
describes
the doctors in
seeing
the
you walk
documentary
and
weren't the
that you were in
doctors
a
that,
wheelchair. And I
like,
think for those of us that are knowledgeable
crazy.
about abuse, just absolutely tearing our hair out at that comment, because you understand that this
she
doctor
keeps putting
is
her foot in her mouth,
breaching
indeed.
their ethics and honestly breaking mandatory reporting laws, because I just think, sir, you're describing a massive red flag for abuse and you did not report it. And you know,
Sarah,
we've
thank
covered
you for the
situations on
heart.
this
I
show,
appreciate
a couple of them,
it.
where children died because of doctors' failure to report abuse that they suspected, that they knew about, that they described very
Completely
accurately,
different
like what you are
situation. Like, why are
describing
you
as
bringing
abuse,
that
and
up?
you
You're
are
talking to
describing a
Gypsy
situation
Rose
where you did not
Blanchards.
report it.
Give me a break.
I'd imagine that's really a hard thing for you to reflect on. And actually, you talked in an interview about that you at some point were considering legal
No, I
action
think
against
she's
those
just
doctors.
she's just a podcaster.
I was.
pretty
And
much.
the only reason why I haven't is, you know,
'Cause
I
there was
in
none.
prison for 8.5 years after all of this, you know, sort of happened. And so in the time that I was in prison, a lot of people are like, well, you could have had all the time in the world to
She could have.
build your case up, but it's like I didn't have.
But she was too busy messaging men, women, trying to get more money out of people, making deals for documentaries because her parents saw it as a cash cow and they needed the money because they were sending her money. Yeah, that's
access
why.
to the internet to try to like find
Bye,
lawyers
Lottie.
and do all this sort of outreach and all this kind of stuff. It wasn't accessible to the fullest ability at that time. And then once I got out, it's like with everything, with the media and the documentaries,
And you could have honed it.
book, then getting pregnant, and
That
my
was all
pregnancy.
on you.
It's like
what?
life was just way too much to take on now
And that
another
was
court case.
all on her.
So it's like, yes, you know, now that I am starting to
Statute of
settle
limitations have
into a
most
calmer
likely
life, I can
gone.
reconsider that avenue and see.
Has anybody looked
number
into
one,
that?
Statute of limitations. What are the statute of limitations? If they have expired, then that time is up. There's something I can really do, right?
Thank you so much for listening to the first.
So that was part one, guys, of the podcast that Gypsy Rose Blanchard did. It's called Nobody Should Believe Me. It's basically about, the whole podcast is about Munchausen syndrome by proxy. However, this host, Andrea Dunlop, she basically didn't do any of her research, talks out of her butt the whole time, in my opinion. But yeah, since we listened to it here, you guys can go and rate it over wherever you listen to podcasts. I will be posting this live over on my YouTube channel, so you guys can check it out again about our conversations we had and what we were talking about and what I had to say and some of the facts that go along with that were missed. And it's so funny, I'm going to show you guys this. I continue to get, this is only 3 of them, but my thing is getting noticed. My Spotify comment is getting noticed very much. in the comments of that Spotify episode. So I know it was hard to listen to. That's part of the reason I wanted to come and like talk about it with you guys and stuff. Because I think it was important to show that there is people out there that support Gypsy for the completely wrong reason. Emotional support kitty, yeah, she came to say hi. But yeah, so there's people that support Gypsy for the completely wrong reasons, and that's a majority of people that support her. I will never say that I think that Gypsy wasn't abused in any way, shape, or form. I think there was a little bit abuse. I don't think enough to condone murder. I don't think anything condones that. I think Gypsy has said that herself as well. But I just wish that people would do the research that's needed into the things that were said on documentaries or in a book or whatever. Because if you put together everything and you look at everything, a lot of things have explanations as to why they're out there. That documentary that had that Feldman guy in it, even her family members were joking about being on the documentary, saying that they threw away Dee Dee's ashes. Like, it was literally a joke to most of the people that were on it because it was a payday and that's it. And I wish people would do the research and understand that. I will be coming out with a YouTube series on Gypsy Rose Blanchard. I'm hoping by the end of this month I have my first episode out. We're going to start at the beginning. We're going to start where we're going to learn about Dee Dee. A little bit about Dee Dee, because I don't like to get too far into Dee Dee because a lot of things that are out there about her family speaking about her, again, are because they were just getting paid and they were joking around with everyone. So we'll start with Dee Dee and we'll start into the younger years of Gypsy. I'm thinking it's going to be 3 parts. It may be 4, but I'm going to try to squeeze it into 3 parts. Same name on YouTube, Ashtootrippy. So to my understanding, the podcast that Into the Weeds always has the girl, I don't know what her name is, but she has the Toll podcast. I guess like a neighbor or something. She interviewed her. I don't know. I don't really follow her because when she came out, she was like talking about Gypsy Rose Blanchard to promote her podcast. Yeah, Nancy, there you go. And so I like called her. I was like, well, your podcast is about something else, but you're still talking about Gypsy. So like I called her out on it and she was really snarky with me. So I was like, wow. And now to find out that she's always on Into the Weeds talking about Gypsy and now she has a podcast about Gypsy. It's just weird to me. But that's not somebody I support, so I don't watch that. But that's cool. That's interesting. I'll have to look at just clippets of it. How did Andrea become an expert in... I don't think she's an expert. I think she was a survivor. I think... I haven't done my research on her, so I believe that Andrea Dunlap basically has something to do with her sister, possibly with Munchausen syndrome by proxy. And she's talked to a lot of people and she talks to the community. She's a part of that community and she says that it's a really small community. So I don't know. I'm going to do a little bit of research into it and stuff like that and see kind of how she became a part of the community and stuff like that. This was great honesty. Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, so Toxic Barbie, she wasn't she was one of the anchors that interviewed she was like during she was a news broadcaster during that time. So she like interviewed Gypsy and Dee Dee early on, like for other things. Yeah. You haven't heard before? Makes sense. Yeah, so she was she was covering the crime and stuff like that. Which is, again, we know all about the stuff that went down in that perspective. But yeah, so that, I don't know, it just when people say they're gonna do, like, for instance, my podcast, I decided I'm not doing anything Gypsy Rose Blanchard related on my podcast because I don't feel like that's what I want my podcast to be about. I don't want to bait people into thinking that I'm going to be talking about Gypsy all the time. Yes, I've talked about her in my updates podcasts and stuff like that. There will never be a full-length deep dive episode on my podcast. You can find it on my YouTube, but not on my podcast. I will not do that. I just don't think it's correct for me because, you know, I want people to know me for different things, including like that true crime aspect. This is just drama. So, like, bad publicity is still good publicity or whatever. Yeah, I guess. I don't know much, just what I hear on Into the... Yeah, well, I'm just telling you, that's where I first met this woman, and I called her out. I ended up blocking her podcast page. But yeah. Andrea allegedly has sponsors, but the link doesn't work. Oh, really? Well, I'm sure she does have sponsors. There's different ways in getting podcast sponsors, I'll tell you that. Yes, I have a podcast. It's called Blurred Lines, Crime, Conspiracy, and the Truth Behind the Gossip. Wrong for murder? Wow. I'm working on a lot of stuff right now, so there's really nothing. I still have to update on a couple missing people that I have talked about. So I still have to do that, and I'm like, But yeah, I put up a new YouTube video as well. There's a few new YouTube videos up, but I did a new YouTube video exclusively on YouTube about the Resilient Jenkins and the baby mama, and there's a lot of nastiness going on with that, so go check it out. Have you done? No, I have not. I don't plan on doing Epstein stuff. The only thing that creeps me out about Epstein is, have you guys watched that movie Blink? Everything seems like that movie Blink. Was it Blink? Don't Blink? Something like that? Yeah, the one with Channing Tatum. But I don't plan on doing all of that, but... yeah, I'm going to hop off of here too, guys, because I don't want to make it too long. But if you guys missed any of this, we listened to Gypsy Rose Blanchards episode of the podcast. I won't be doing number 2. I won't be doing episode number 2. This is enough bullshit that I had for the day that I needed. Again, this is the second time I've listened to it because I listened to it at work and I needed to talk about it. So, I will post this over on YouTube. So if you guys are over on YouTube, be sure to hype this video. Leave a like down below and be sure you're subscribed. But I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day. Stay awesome, stay positive, and we'll talk about it next time. Bye, guys.